Today we're going to be ranking the worst punishments ever, and see which are the ones I would take and which ones I wouldn't. Sort of a spoiler, it's everything. I mean, why would you want to take a punishment if you hadn't done anything wrong? Well, maybe you haven't thanked Beyoncé for waking up today, so you deserved it or something. I don't know. Lingchi, also known as death by 1,000 cuts, is a form of punishment that started in China around the 10th century and continued until 1905. Pretty wild, not gonna lie. 1,000 years of pain for death by 1,000 cuts. Sounds like when Kakashi did it to Naruto. Now, a punishment this bad was only done to people who did things that were grave enough for people to agree that you should die, as if you were in a game Jigsaw made. Treason, killing your parents, or someone else's master for that matter, are reasons heavy enough for you to get it. You'd get tied to a wooden frame in front of many people because executing criminals was a public spectacle back then. Maybe even now in some countries. Then, after you get tied, there would be an executioner happy enough to slice your body parts. The cuts were shallow for the purpose of just making you bleed, but enough to make you scream. Death by 1,000 cuts was not really 1,000 cuts in all cases. It was only until you're dead, because the cuts depended on whatever the executioner pleased. If he's been called to kill you after waking up on the right side of the bed, you might last for some time. For you to survive it, you were forced to take in ridiculous amounts of opium. You know, painkillers. Well, you can't blame me. It's fun. I laugh at the misfortunes of others, and there's nothing more enjoyable than this. The first slices were made on parts where you wouldn't die immediately, like the arms, legs, or chest. Otherwise, that wouldn't be fun for them. You'd have to tank it for God knows how long. But as long as you're alive, hours, days, weeks, name your time. But if you happen to be someone who got an experienced executioner who's boring enough to not make it last, you won't even get to 100 before dying from blood loss. Some executioners, let's call them exes for short, were so good at violence, they had the choice of slicing skin in one go to show the bones. Yum. If you're that durable and taking all of the cuts, the exes could get tired of you and just mercifully kill you with a head slice or to the heart. Beware though, not all were mercifully killed. Families bribed the exes to make it fast. I know you're the one who's gonna fillet my son like a sashimi. Here's 50,000, just make it fast. Sure thing, no worries. The father of this criminal bribed me to make the killing fast. Do we let that happen?
1,000 cuts, 减到1刮20，减到1刮20， 1,000 cuts.
Okay, I hear you people. 1,000 cuts it is. Yeah, it do be like that sometimes. They'd get the money but still proceed with the torture, and now you're dead. But to them, you're still alive. The Chinese believe that the body is sacred, and it should remain complete even after death. Well, cutting them 1,000 times doesn't sound too Chinese now, does it? That's exactly the purpose, for the criminal to have an incomplete afterlife. Lingchi was banned in 1905 when French soldiers took photos of the actual thing the year before. That led to international communities telling China, don't do that, to which they surprisingly stopped. This belongs to A tier, definitely A tier. Oubliette. The oubliette was a punishment in the medieval era. This was their version of the shoes we see in correctional facilities. But this was a lot worse. The name oubliette came from the word oublier, French for to forget. So it basically means to forget cell. This was a narrow and deep pit that had only one hole for both entrance and exit. That exit was a trapdoor above that can't be reached by the prisoner. Let's say you did something so stupid in the medieval era, and this was your punishment. Say goodbye to everyone, because once you're thrown here, you'd be forgotten. If you got lucky, you'd be the first one in that cell. Normally, those who went cray-cray in here either starved to death or died from whatever reason never got out. Their rotting bodies were turned into a feast by rats who were the only ones that gave these former prisoners company if they weren't in the mood to eat. If they were hungry, they'd get eaten. You'd be with their bones. Yum. Some of the oubliettes were built underground so they'd be away from any sign of human presence. But my personal favorite design of these were the ones built at the top of castle walls, so the prisoners could hear laughter, footsteps, and conversations for extra psychological damage. Others, like in Warwick Castle, the oubliettes were so narrow that the prisoners could just lie down. The O'Carroll clan added wooden spikes in their Leap Castle oubliettes in Ireland. When the castle was bought by new owners, they saw a f***ton of skeletons spiked inside those cells. This punishment belongs to the S tier. Putting criminals in cells was one thing, yes, as it should be, but leaving them to die while hearing the outside world revolve without them? That's a whole nother level of spanking. Scaphism. Thankfully, the other name for this, the boats, doesn't automatically give everything away. This punishment was first written down by Plutarch, and it was about a Persian soldier called Mithridates. Mithridates took about 17 days to die with this punishment. It starts off with the sentence to be enclosed inside 2 boats. Their head, hands, and feet were left out in the open while everything else was in the boat. Before setting the boat sail for Neverland, the victim would be force-fed with a milk-honey mixture until he shat himself in the boat. I know, it was horrible, but that was the punishment. Now Mithridates has a pool of crap in the boat which could give him infections, but that was the starting line. Remember the parts that were left in the open? The head, hands, and feet? Those parts were then smothered with honey, which was an attractive aroma for insects. These insects would feast on your exposed parts, and if you have an open wound or cut, yeah, that's gonna get mukbanged too. Without anything to eat or anything to drink, malnutrition would be your next enemy that would surely win in a matter of days. The piling up poop inside the boat made the perfect breeding ground for maggots to eat your flesh that was tightly bonded inside the boat. Not only that, the stench of your poop is perfume for scavengers like vultures who would not stop eating you since you can't do anything about it. If by any chance you survived the first day, the Punisher would do the force feeding again the next day and just do it repeatedly every day until you die. Even if you begged them to just kill you, all they'd say was, "That's what we're doing, killing you." Technically, they were right, just not at the speed you want it to happen. Not everyone gets a once-in-a-lifetime experience like this. Only those who betrayed the kingdom and those who did serious crimes like murder had an entry ticket for this. For the slow and painful death that embodied the word inhumane, this one belongs to S tier surely. Elephants. In India, people used to train elephants to be high-level assassins. Although they don't suit up in black outfits and ninja stuff, they kill people simply by lying down on them or stepping on their bodies. Since elephants have above-average intelligence compared to other animals, they were the most convenient animal to train and use. A lot of documents say that the elephant punishment started around 320 AD, and by then, it was already an established form of slap on the wrist. I wonder what crimes you could have done for you to get the elephant treatment. Well, theft, tax evasion, not subscribing to our channel, and rebellion were some of the things you could be charged with to be the lucky winner. So subscribe to the channel and like the video to be safe. Massive tip for people in the past, don't get caught, because if you did get caught, you'd be tied down. Then the elephant would be guided by the handler to step on you. Or if they were feeling prickly, they might tell the elephant, "Hey, I want you to..." And then the elephant would hit the criminal with their bladed tusks. The Mughal emperors in the 16th and 17th century were so fond of this that one of them, Emperor Akbar. Akbar? No way. But Emperor Akbar had this thing called trial by elephant. The mechanics of the game are simple. You get thrown into an arena with elephants, stay alive for a few days, and win. By win, I meant that's how you prove your innocence. In Thailand, the elephants were more acrobatic. They played with the criminals first by throwing them in the air, then the moment they land, boom, stepped on. The elephant punishment stopped when the British stopped it being done in places that they conquered. Apart from the trial by elephants where you have to last days, this sort of punishment wasn't really all that amazing. Brutal, yes. But amazing? Heck no. I mean, the people died relatively quickly here, so it goes to the C tier. Mazzatello. From the 1700s until 1806, the Papal States of Italy used this as a way of capital punishment for crimes that were considered heinous enough to remove the doers from the face of the earth. You know, those things like murder. The word mazza in Mazzatello meant a mallet was used for it rather than the usual rope on the neck and head removal. If you were charged with this, you'd be put in a public place in Rome with a priest. You'd have to walk up to a platform with a coffin that the people could see. The executioner, wearing a mask and black clothing, had his trusty mallet with him, and you'd be clashing heads with that in a matter of moments.
Pater noster qui es in celis sanctificetur nomen tuum adveniat regnum tuum fiat voluntas tua sicut in cielo et in terra. Panem nostrum quotidianum da nobis hodie et dimite nobis debita nostra sicun et nos dimitimus debitoribus nostris. Et ne nos inducas in tentationem sed libera nos a malo. Amen.
You done? Yeah, I'm done. Have your fun. After that prayer that's meant to clean the soul of the criminal, the mallet holder would suddenly see a different light. The head is no longer a head. He'd see everything like this. He'd raise the mallet overhead and swing it down with full force. Cha-ching! He got a high score. And then reality sets in that it wasn't really an arcade game, but an execution. He hit the hammer directly on the head with just enough strength to knock you out, but not kill you. That wasn't meant to be the killing blow, although it definitely feels like it since getting whacked with a mallet right on the head should be enough to bust your brains out to splatter everywhere. That was meant to scare the viewers and basically say, behave yourselves or you're next. The second step was to get your groaning and convulsing body to have your throat slit, and there was simply no way you'd live through that one. One of the most famous cases of someone kissing the mighty Mjolnir was Giacomo Cenci. He and his siblings were executed in Rome for killing his family. The last known use of Mazzatello was 1806. After that, the Papal States veered towards a faster way for them to die like guillotine. I think Mazzatello was one heck of a punishment, but not enough to be at the top half of the ranking. Definitely D tier. I mean, the point of it was to semi-kill them, before the actual thing. Not much pizzazz on being inhumane. Rats. Throughout the span of the human race, there were many variations on how people used rats to punish who they punished. The rats in the oubliette might have been an unexpected one, but that was one way to go. The one I'll be talking about here is different. In this method, punishers would lie you down facing up, put a rat on your stomach or chest, and then cover it with a metal bucket. Cage if they were rich. The container would be heated up with fire, which would drive the rat inside wild as hell. Now Remy right here is desperate to find a way out. With no way to chew through metal, it would then gnaw on your flesh. The rat would dig deeper and chew on your internal organs until it found a safe space where it was colder. Doesn't matter if it was inside your body or out, it would chew away to better conditions. How's that for punishment? Lucky you weren't living in the past and all you got was a belt, because in ancient Rome, this Emperor Nero did this to those he found threatening his throne. Now it was a different case for the Dutch. Diederik Sonoy was a commander who used this punishment but with a ceramic bowl to get information from Spanish prisoners, whose only crime was getting caught. And in the most recent times, Augusto Pinochet's Chile would put rats inside the female prisoners' vajayjays. I'm tempted to put this at S tier because it was gory and lived up to the name of Inhumane in the title. But it wasn't used as a punishment through and through, and that makes an F for failing to be a punishment. Eye gouging. Well, now there's no surprise. You already know how it went. But let me still tell you how scooping out eyes were done as punishments and whatnot through time. In ancient Greece, it was considered as an act of repenting. Stories of Oedipus were something that fueled this practice. One of the earliest legal systems, like the Hammurabi's Code, states an eye for an eye. Yeah, that's where it came from. It's freaking literal. If you blinded someone's virgin eyes, they'd scoop your eyes out. In medieval Europe, this punishment was reserved for traitors and heinous criminals. For example, this is you. You had enough of living paycheck to paycheck in medieval times, but you're not a noble, so you were destined to be like that back then. You wanted higher pay, so you rebelled with other people who wanted the same thing as you. Then William the Conqueror saw you, and your compadre got caught. Say goodbye to your eyes, because eye gouging was something William resorted to instead of just killing you, since he wanted to show mercy. The most recent case of this punishment was when an Iranian court sentenced a man to be blinded when he attacked a woman with acid. The woman lost her vision, so it was in a literal sense an eye for an eye. Sometimes hot metal rods were used to stick in your eyes holes, sometimes knives. On its own, it's a C-tier worthy punishment. It was legal in its time, it doesn't kill, but it's gory. It's a warning, people would get the message entirely, but to the criminals, there's still some light to life even if they have no sight. Mid! Super mid. Boiling liquid. In many parts of the ancient world, this was a punishment for those who deserved it. This method of punishment was fairly simple, and you could do it at the comfort of your own home. Don't do it, I'm telling you. You're gonna get with crimes against humanity. Just boil any liquid. Water, oil, or if you have some cash, go for metals like molten gold. Once it's boiling, pour it down the victim's throat. Simple as that. Believe me if I tell you that I'm not encouraging anyone to do this, even if it does sound like it. Don't do it. The temperature of these liquids is not to be anywhere near your internal organs, because for one, it will scald your lips and tongue. Instant blisters are what you'll have from the get-go. The esophagus would swell, and the steam of burning internal organs would be another part of it. As the liquid goes down your body, it rip out your stomach linings like it's butter, which would of course end up in organ failure. A Spanish governor in the 16th century Ecuador was killed by tribes there in this way because he abused the gold resources. The molten gold was heated until boiling, poured down his throat, and killed like the little wuss he was. The punishment wasn't all that special. Inhumane, yeah, but not creative like Scaphism. Mid-tier, no doubt. The Iron Maiden. Badass freaking name. Could be a name of a band, but other than being a heavy metal, it literally is a heavy metal. The design of this punishment looked like a sarcophagus made out of iron with spikes behind the doors. You'd be placed inside it while you're blindfolded, and the doors would be closed. The spikes were not long enough to kill you, but it created wounds that were enough for you to bleed out slowly until you die after several hours or days. Then the blood would drain out the bottom to be shown to everyone. One of the wildest cases where the Iron Maiden was thought to be used was when one was discovered in Baghdad, Iraq, in 2003. They found it at the National Olympic Committee's headquarters, and it was thought to be owned by Uday Hussein, Saddam Hussein's son. He was reported to have used it on athletes that weren't performing well, so literally everybody needed to be LeBron James or Messi to be safe. This deserves a big D, pause. Immurement. In medieval Europe, those who believed in religions other than what they have were called heretics. They were subjected to immurement. Criminals with severe crimes were also sentenced with this, but it was more on the religious side of things. So what the heck is immurement? Well, it's when a person gets sealed in a small space, like a wall, until they die. Unlike the oubliette that had at least some form of exit to it, this had nothing except for a small hole so they could breathe, and food and water could be given to them and make them live in the dark longer. They start with choosing a place perfect for them to be put in. Typically, it was a remote area that people don't usually go to, like the walls of the church, basements of castles, or just a random underground chamber that definitely didn't exist for the sole purpose of imprisoning people to death. Then you're gonna get tied up with chains, so you don't try doing anything stupid before putting you in the space. Once you're in your personal medieval man cave where you'll spend the rest of your life, a thick layer of bricks and cement would be built around you starting from the bottom up, because that's how physics works. Haha, you see us? You see what we're doing? We're saying goodbye to you. It's already the second layer, fish. It won't be long before we stop seeing your annoying criminal face. You know, this is actually taking longer than I expected it to be, and I'm running of insults to tell you. So, how's your day? And yeah, that's why I really hate Margaret. I don't even know why I married her. Perhaps it was her love language. I mean, she ate a rat and got the Black Death just to show her love. How can you resist being in love with that woman? Now all she does is play with the skeletons in my closet. So what's your story? Oop, don't tell me. You're already walled. You suck. Little tip, once this brick gets placed, take a little breather. Oh, I forgot. That's all you're gonna get. Ha! When the people who got this treatment died, the most common case was from suffocation, air running out and all that yada yada. Then those who had better lungs died from dehydration. Eventually, that little of a space got filled up with their own dookie, which from what we knew with the boat punishment, didn't end well with infections. One example of this from ancient Rome was the Vestal virgins who pledged to not have sexy times forever. Those who did get some woohoo time were sentenced to immurement. They can't just kill them, because there was a rule that said nobody can make a Vestal bleed under any circumstance. So immurement it was. I just realized something. This is the more inhumane version of the oubliette, and that was S tier. I think I'll put that one down to A, and put this one at S tier. There we go. Bamboo torture. Or as I'd like to call it, being one with the trees punishment. You'd be tied and restrained with ropes above bamboo shoots that weren't fully grown yet. The bamboo shoot, then, is guided to grow straight up your ass, if not there, some other parts near your ass. Knowing bamboo, they grow centimeters and inches every day, which is perfect if you want to punish someone as the Lorax who speaks for the trees. In not so long from now, the bamboo will push against your body, and it will continue to grow regardless. But it was not just one shoot, there are a lot of them, and it's not going to be a happy ride on your way out. The sharp edge of each shoot would cut through your skin, internal organs, blood vessels, and much more every time it grew. To add some pain factor, you were kept awake the entire time you're getting diddied by the bamboo until it shoots out the other side of where it decided to grow. By any means, this was not a punishment with quick death. It would tear everything it could and hurt you as much as inhumanly possible before killing you. There were stories from the Second World War that said bamboo torture was used by Japanese soldiers as a punishment to prisoners of war for getting caught. Plus, they'd use it to get information, although this bit is still not sure. But hey, Mythbusters tested the bamboo torture out to see if it really was possible. Thankfully, they did it on a ballistic gelatin that was supposed to realistically replicate human flesh. What do you know? Lo and behold, it worked. This one belongs to A tier. Doesn't matter if the person lived through it or not. It was freakishly creative, and who would have actually thought it could work in the first place? I liked the innovation and the damage output of this punishment. Cannibalism. While it may not be something that you'd get physically hurt per se, it is still inhumane by today's standards, simply because cannibalism is unsanitary, illegal, immoral, and downright disgusting. And even if it wasn't today, most of the ancient world, apart from the ones who considered cannibalism as medicine, saw cannibalism in a similar light as to how we're seeing it today. That's why it's been made as a punishment at a time when crimes against humanity were called justice. It started off by preparing a meal for the guy who will eat it while the eater watched the preparation. The meal was made out of human body parts, otherwise this'll just be Hell's Kitchen. All of this meal prep was done out for the public just to tell everyone to stay in their lanes and be good citizens. Of course, the ones who will eat it would hesitate at first. That's why force feeding is a thing. You've seen that blank room soup video? This was basically like that. I don't even feel the need to explain how cannibalism is a bad punishment. It just is. And for the reason that I can't do it, it goes into C tier. Out of all these things that I've said, I think I'll take none of these as a punishment. But how about you? What sort of a masochist are you to even think you can take any of the punishment I just said? Comment down below. See y'all.